Okay, so today's video is actually by request by a gent called Alex, among others, I should say. I won't go into too much more detail about that, only because I'm sure if Alex's kids knew it was Alex, then he'd probably be in a bit of trouble, so I'll avoid that. But anyway, so today basically we have kind of a general rundown for kind of a specialized group. Those would be orthotic wearers. Orthotic wearers typically have a very difficult time finding cleats only because most boots are not designed to really fit the shape of an orthotic, and certainly aren't meant to fit the shape of an orthotic and a foot inside there. So, orthotics have become a lot more common in the last few years, basically owing to increased rates of both Seaver's disease and plantar fasciitis, especially in soccer players. As a matter of fact, basically cleats are not really conducive to the growth patterns of an average foot, and they're also not. Well, they're not as comfort-minded as perhaps the majority of running shoes are, that sort of thing. Certainly, some cleats are extremely comfortable, but the majority of them aren't designed to be able to support a foot the way they should. So you'll find a lot of bladed studs have issues with a lot of people, I should say, who kind of grew up on more modern cleats, that sort of thing. You're going to find increased rates of malformations of different parts of your foot. Tarsal bones tend to grow apart simply because weight dispersal in cleats is pretty below average. You also find a lot of issues with heel problems, owing both to plantar fasciitis and Seaver's disease. So, as a result, we see a lot of orthotics come through here, a lot of them. So, I want to kind of give people a little bit of a heads up as to what works and what doesn't, and give you a little bit of an idea of what you're looking for when you start to go buying. We'll start off with the Lotto Stadio Primato. Kind of word of caution about the Stadio Primato and the Copa Mundial is that once you buy these ones, and I should say also the Mystic 4, once you buy these ones and you try your orthotic in them, they're yours. One thing you need to do when you purchase these is to take the sock liner out. They are all die-cut EVA sock liners. Stadio Primato, Copa Mundial, and, of course, the Mystic 4. So what that essentially means is because it's die cut, they have to glue it down to the sole of the shoe. So as a result, once you break that glue, unfortunately, that shoe belongs to you. So don't bother trying to return anything. Make sure it fits when you're in the store, because otherwise you're going to be out of luck. Definitely, when you're trying them on, take them for a nice lengthy run. I don't care where you got to do it, even if you're in the tiniest little bodega corner store. You got to take them for a run. If you don't do that, you're going to be causing yourself problems. So anyway, really the only reason the Copa and the Stadio Primato are even on this list is just because they have an entirely one-piece kangaroo leather upper. And the reasoning, obviously, behind that is that they have a massive stretch. They may start a little bit uncomfortable, but truthfully they will fit nicely to the shape and form of that orthotic. Other shoes are on this list for entirely different and in some cases better reasons. But the Stadio Primato and the Copa Mundial are here simply because they stretch to fit the shape of your orthotic, which obviously is a big win, but there are definitely some disadvantages to them as well. One other advantage to the Copa that really can't be topped by the majority of shoes is that it has such a flat sole and it is bone hard. But because it has such a flat sole, basically the idea behind an orthotic is that it's supposed to provide the support that a shoe doesn't. So having a flat sole actually allows the orthotic to do its job at its most efficient. So what happens is, essentially, because there's really nothing, no shape, no contour of any kind to the Copa Mundial, as a result, that orthotic is doing its job as best it possibly can. Every other shoe in this collection right here has some sort of shape or contour or whatever that makes it just a little bit less ideal than the Copas. So the Copa is definitely a terrific option for the vast majority of orthotic wearers. Another good option, but not what I would call the best option, is the Tiempo Legend 3. This was kind of last year's, big shoe for orthotic wearers. I would say probably 6 out of every 10 were 100% satisfied with this shoe. However, the other 4, and this includes our requester Alex, had issues with basically it stretched too much. and that does happen, but you have to have an especially wide foot for that to be the case, or at least more often than not. The reason why the Legend 3 stretches too much, whereas the Stadio Primato and the Copa Mondiale don't, is simply because this is actually a two-piece leather upper. There is one stitch on the heel, and there is another on the forefoot. The rest of these stitches you see here are all cosmetic. They're just to keep the backing on. So it's a two-piece kangaroo leather upper, and as a result, what ends up happening is it stretches a lot more widthwise than it does lengthwise, because this second piece of leather over here kind of holds it in place as far as length goes, from the heel to the forefoot, but width it's not contained the same way. So what ends up happening is it stretches too much widthwise, and you're going to have the shoe, or I'm sorry, your foot actually sliding around on the inside of that shoe. There are some performance orthotics that are for sport, you know what I mean, specifically designed for athletic wear. They tend to have a stickier lining to the top of the orthotic itself. It only lasts for so long. Once you start sweating or it gets wet, generally they tend to start turning slick anyway, so not really worth the extra coin on those ones. What is worth the extra coin, however, is most definitely getting an orthotic, a custom orthotic that is a really, really stiff one. The really, really rigid orthotics tend to be made out of wood, as opposed to that spongy kind of, not quite foam, but it feels like foam material. It's almost like cork. Those ones tend to provide less support. They are definitely less expensive, and a lot of insurance plans cover them. But the stiffer orthotics, some insurance plans do not, and as a result, they tend to be a little bit more rare. But those are the ideal. Now, the reason the Legend 4 is on this list, and actually higher up on this list than the Legend 3 is simply because it is a one-piece leather upper. There is no second piece supporting the heel, so as a result, you get a widthwise stretch that's reduced and a length stretch that is actually increased. So you have a lot less sliding on here. They end up being a good deal less roomy than the Tiempo Legend 3s, and they have a terrific stretch to them. Another bonus to both the Legend 3 and the Legend 4 is that when you're first putting them in, sizing up for an orthotic, the sock liners obviously peel right out. So that makes it a lot simpler to go ahead and fit your orthotic right in there. Basically, this is what you need. Do not try and put your orthotic on top of a contoured sock liner. You're going to find that they are just completely incompatible. The orthotic will slide all over the place, and not only that, but you will never be able to fit your foot inside of a shoe with two different sock liners in there, especially if one's the orthotic. Another shoe that works really well, well actually, you know what, I'll come to this one last. First off, I'm going to do the Mystic 4s. Mystic 4s are another great one. They do not have the same contour on the instep as the Legend 4s, so they tend to be a flatter surface to work on. So that's definitely a great start for the orthotic, no question. But then on top of that also, the Mystic 3s I did not include in this list because the full grain leather is really just not as pliable as it is on the Mystic 4. The leather tends to have a better stretch on the Mystic 4 than on the Mystic 3. And then on top of that, also the sole that's on the inside of this one, the top of the actual outsole, tends to be considerably less slick, so the orthotic stays in place a little bit better. And last, definitely not least, is your CTR 360 Trequartista 2, not the Maestri 2. The Maestri 2, simply because of its overly contoured and really just, kind of rigid upper. It's not rigid, it does have a little bit of a stretch to it, but it's not nearly as stretchy as the Trequartista, and the only reason being because this nameless synthetic on the Trequartista actually has very little stitching to it. There's very little backing, very little stitching, so as a result it tends to stretch a little bit better than the Maestri 2. And then on top of that, also, it's got that same sort of less contoured surface underneath the sock liner. This one you don't have to worry about tearing out. Actually, it peels out a little bit easier than the other die-cut sock liners. So, but the sock liner is pre-molded, so you need to lose it, no question about it. There's not going to be enough space in there for you otherwise. But the material on this does not stretch nearly as much as a kangaroo leather, but that's actually advantageous. It is soft enough on the inside with that backing that you're not going to have to worry too much about chafing. And your foot tends to be a little bit better secured in these ones too than in the Maestri, only because the Maestri is meant to stretch a little bit more than these ones, even if it doesn't necessarily do that. That's what the backing is designed to do, so you tend to have a little bit less protection when your foot is so close to the outer shell of the shoe. But anyway, I'll give you one last one on here that is actually kind of one to avoid. I hate to say it because I really do love the boot, but it's the AudiPure 4. The AudiPure 4 is one to avoid only because there is those pesky 3 stripes right there, which I know Adidas has to have it on every single cleat, but these 3 stripes right here do not stretch nearly as much as the rest of the upper on the shoe. So as a result, you're not going to get nearly enough stretch out of it to be able to accommodate your orthotic and your foot. So as a result, the AudiPure 4 kind of rules itself out. It also has a contoured, basically the inside of the shoe is tapered right on the midfoot. So as a result, an orthotic tends to fit very infrequently in there. So, but it's definitely a shoe to avoid. Otherwise, too, because the backing on the AudiPure 4 tends to be a very sticky one. So your foot will not have the opportunity to move around and prevent that kind of chafing that occurs with just about every shoe when you're wearing an orthotic. So, AudiPure 4 is avoid. Stadio Primato is kind of at the bottom of the pile, followed by Legend 3s. After the Legend 3 comes the Mystic 4, Legend 4, Copa Mundial, and CTR 360 Triquartista 2 in that order. Let us know. Those are the ones that really are. What we can do to help. You can reach us right in the comments on this video, or you can email us goalstore@goalstore.com. That's GOLSTORE. And thanks very much for tuning in. Hope we could be of some help for you guys.